welcome to the first episode of the Cloud Talk Show. Hey, this is Larry Smithmeyer, and I'm your other host, Ralph Rivas. How are you, Larry?
Hello, doing well.
Good to see you. I see that you have your Mountain Dew all ready to go over there. It's been helping you today.
Yes, it has. It has.
I've just been doing regular coffee, but that's okay. I'm a little old school with that. But anyway, so we're over here. We're dressed down, so to speak, because we are basically being remote and just trying to keep ourselves up on the latest technology, and that's what this is all about. A couple of sort of, you got blue and I got blue. We got our blue collar look at all this cloud technologies, this newfangled cloud technologies. How are you feeling about this stuff right now, Mr. Lair?
It's new. It's different. But really, cloud is nothing but other people's computers. Right?
It is.
So it's kind of fun to see. We went back in time to shared resources.
Right.
We started out. I don't know about you. I started out on mainframes and mini computers, and
just about.
So the whole idea was you were running in your own little virtual environment, and now we're back to that.
Exactly.
With Azure, where you can carve off your own little piece, and you get to say, well, how many resources do I need with that piece?
Exactly.
So we're seeing the same kind of problems that we had then, but they're all kind of dressed up in new clothing.
Well, and of course, there's let's say the problems are a lot bigger than they used to be.
Yes, but we've got better tooling.
We do. We do have a lot better tooling. And here's the key, all right? So we're coming in from a world where we were just using things like Visual Studio. We got very advanced with things like when .NET came out and the Visual Studio IDE came out, good old integrated development environment that was so sophisticated to the point where those tools are still very powerful today. They can do so much for us. And then all of a sudden, all these big companies started getting, I guess, whatever religion. I guess the real company that got a religion was Microsoft here, right? Because Google and Facebook and everything else, they were already on that edge of the fence anyway. But it was Microsoft that suddenly made that turn, that essentially dragged us with them, if you think about it, right? And here's the key. That's right. So here's the key, right? So with SharePoint is where one of our things that we work with, because even though we're developer guys that did not just web stuff, but we do Windows, we do whatever. SharePoint was the product. SharePoint allowed itself to be, say, customized to a certain extent. So we got into that. We got to know that pretty well. It was always a web product, and always the question was like, it's a web product. Why can't we act with it like it's a web product? And sure enough, recently, it made that change. It made that switch. So to me, it was like the last of the big pieces, that along with Office and everything else, Office 365, that suddenly came over, and next thing you know, the cloud is in our face. And even my mom's been saying, I've been living in the clouds for years. Well, just as well, here I am. I'm actually living in the cloud. So perfect. So that's what this is about. Go ahead.
Speaking of Visual Studio, can you remember, and the old days, because, hey, we're old guys. Can you remember the first case tool that you saw?
The first case tool.
Computer-aided software engineering, right? Nobody remembers that term because now it's IntelliSense and all that crap. But
correct.
I can remember it was for an Ada product. I was at an Ada conference, and it was like,
wow.
It was only something that people that were kind of in the military could get a hold of.
That makes sense. I was a business user at the time, so that's what the other folks talked about. But I do remember, because I remember going to DeVry back when, and they had the so-called case tools where you can like match stuff up and make stuff happen. But I'll tell you, the first real case tool or sort of case tool that I thought was the most compelling is when they came up with the very first version of Visual Basic. When all of a sudden I could drag and drop stuff and make stuff happen. Then I realized, wait a minute, there was something even earlier than that. And I remember a guy by the name of Mr. Jobs, who had been kicked out of his last company for some reason, of course brought back later on, did something with Next, and he was demonstrating on their machines, essentially putting together a program wherein the box said, I would do this, a box said, I would do that. And this is like what we see now with Nintex workflow and everything else. He puts his boxes together, and next thing you know, it did something. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And he said, oh, yeah, come to Cupertino, and for $10,000, we'll give you a machine, and we'll let you learn it. $10,000. Wait a minute, Microsoft's giving it away for free. Or at least it was free at the time. Right? So wait a minute. Speaking of free, And here's the big difference. How much money do you think you have spent getting yourself together, if not just your own money probably, but also your company's money, to be able to put all these tools together? Right? Can you imagine all that? Now all of a sudden, this stuff literally, I'm sorry to say, is truly free. So whatever you spent, I'm sorry that you had to spend that money, but here it is. It's actually free. And that's what we'd like to go over some of that stuff today too, to show you. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a. I'm sure you had another one over here before I go ahead, and I'm going to actually do a little demo what we're doing on the SharePoint side, at least, with these free tools.
No. Let's go to the demo.
All right. Cool. All right. So I'm gonna do a pause over here, and we're gonna move things around to the next screen, and maybe there'll be a little bit of animation. Who knows what I'll do to this in a little while. All right. Stand by, please. And we're quickly back over here. Hey, there's the new logo. There's still a work in progress over here, so you can see it's a close-up, so you can't see it very, very well. But if you can see my screen, so can the recorder. And I just wanted to show you a really quick picture over here, borrowed from our friend Andrew Connell, who actually, I'm not sure if he put this or Microsoft put it together. Let's go see if I can find that picture. Here we go. Yes, there it is. Okay, so what I'd like to show you over here, and let's go ahead and zoom into this, is, oh, geez. That's funny. Okay, we're going to take a much better, closer look at it. There we go. Now you can see it over here. So this is the concept of the tool chain, and you can think about over here what you used to pay for and what you don't have to pay for anymore. So we had originally Microsoft.net that was right over here, right over here. Take a look right over here, and then now we have this concept of Node.js, or Node.js. Basically, what it is, it's just something that's going to run whatever it is you need to run. In this case, it's .NET, the whole .NET Core and all that stuff that was made originally for Windows. It's sort of like ported over to other systems right now. But Node, it's basically a JavaScript thing, right? That runs on all kinds of systems as well. But JavaScript, for heaven's sakes, there it is. Okay.
JavaScript out of the browser.
Out of the browser.
Into the systems.
How about it? Now, the interesting thing about that is that they're able to make this thing work essentially on the command line. So you didn't have to have a browser to make it work. You could make it do stuff. Right. That was neat, which is now what you needed to make it work. Now, the next side, we had NuGet. Well, technically speaking, we had other ways of bringing that stuff together, but NuGet became Microsoft's way of getting packages of software together. So if you had to go get like maybe some version of the .NET Core or something like that in there, NuGet would go ahead and make sure it got the latest version when you did a build and everything else. Well, in the case of Node came with something else called the Node Package Manager, which is NPM. All right, I thought that was NuGet Package Manager. It turns out it's Node's Package Manager. Essentially, that's the command for installing all that stuff. Now, I'm just going to give you a quick teaser. There's something that we can use instead of NPM for doing that as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Next, on the middle side, now here was the big money side, Visual Studio. Ka-ching. Now, that was, to me, always worth the money, getting that. MSDN version or whatever version. You had to have it because it was ultimate. Compared to any other programming system, this is probably why I never really did Macs or Linux or anything else before. It's because of Visual Studio. The ultimate IDE for IntelliSense and all that stuff. You build, everything was ready to go for you. You had templates and all that stuff. All, boom, you're ready to go. And it was so powerful.
The best case tool that's ever been.
Absolutely. Not just case tool, but source control, everything. All nice, beautiful in one place. And then what did they do? So they went over and said, you know what? We're going to make a baby version of it, Visual Studio, it's called Visual Studio Code. And we thought that was the replacement for what was called the Express version. You remember that, the Visual Studio Express, which was like essentially, well, we want the kids to really get into our stuff, so let's make an Express freebie version for those college kids. So, yeah, right, like they're going to use that. So they made Code, which was even cooler because it ran on anything also. It was another thing that ran on a Mac or on your Android or wherever. Now, this was not an IDE. I've been pointed out so many times that Visual Studio Code is not an IDE like Visual Studio is. So all those things that it would do, like building, those templates and all that stuff, are not there. It's purely a code tool. So that's why they have this thing called Yeoman over here. Now, Yeoman happened to be what Microsoft decided to choose of all the open source scaffolding projects. And apparently, I didn't know that's what it was called. Scaffolding is when you take like a template of stuff. So, okay, you're going to have this file, this kind of CSS, this script file, this JS in this order, or for that, what we used to remember to be able to build something. Oh, that XML file, your web config, and all that stuff to be able to create a package. So they called it scaffolding, putting it together, and they chose Yeoman to do it, to be able to put that together. They could have chose anything, but they chose that. On the next side, now the code. Now here's is interesting because C# is actually a language to use. All right, as opposed to say Visual Basic or C itself or even Java or even JavaScript. That's a language. So that was the weapon of choice, so to speak, eventually. I mean, I started with VB.NET because I did VB, and it seemed like, hey, why not? Why should I do C# when everyone was all equal? But eventually, we were like, okay, everyone's doing C. It's much easier to get people to do this right off from college and everything else. So C#, fine. But then we have TypeScript on their side. TypeScript. Now, what's TypeScript? TypeScript is just what's basically called a oh man, now I forgot the term again. It's not a compiler.
Oh, right. It's a transpiler.
It's a transpiler. Thank you very much. I should remember the T in TypeScript. Transpiling. Now, what's transpiling? It's basically taking one language and turning it into another version of the same language, sort of. All right, the transpiler in this case has some commands. It's very C#-ish. A lot of the things that it does is C#-ish as far as object-oriented, sort of like concepts and everything else. But the idea is it translates it or turns it into JavaScript, which is sort of open, the Wild West of doing stuff. All right, so that's all the transpiler is doing. It's not a true language. However, it is a true way of doing things, so it has to be learned. All right, so that's something now we have to start learning and learning very well. Finally, at the back end, we have these two other concepts. So we have what Visual Studio used to do was building stuff, MS Build. Now, MS Build sort of like has a long history to itself, but MS Build really is just a configuration system. You set up in like an XML file or in essentially not exactly a script file, but in a sort of like script fashion. These are the parameters that you're going to set. So in Build, you're going to okay, first I'm going to compile, then I'm going to test, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. Basically as a configuration, as parameters, as configuration settings. On what they've decided to do is here with Gulp and everything else, they've decided to essentially just do the basic coding versions of these things. So what Gulp is, and they could have chose anything else to do this, but like they had Bower also originally, they were going to go that way, but that was a configuration file. This is code, which means you can actually create in code anything. If you can dream it up, it can be part of the build process. So because you're doing it in code, you can actually essentially troubleshoot it like it's code. You can go update it like it's code. You can do something totally different to it because it's code. So it's wide open. And the only other portion that's different over here, because after all, in .NET and regular Microsoft programs, you're creating DLLs or libraries and other kinds of packages like that. They essentially are using what's called Webpack. Webpack is not, Microsoft's not the only one using it. Other folks are using it too. But it's a sort of way of just packaging all your assets and putting it in one place and making its way out someplace else. I guess it would be more like, remember those CAD files that they used to have when we used to send stuff out? So it's sort of like that, like a zip format. You can actually open it up and see it.
Or Install Shield. I mean, Install Shield or Wix or one of those packagers, that does something different. That actually does some installation pieces.
Exactly.
And this is really only it's a combiner. Webpack combines it all into smaller.
All right, so now
easier to handle packages.
Exactly. So now we end up doing everything on the command line like everyone else. So we got so used to doing things with the IDE. Well, we're now on the command line, so we get to open up command line tools. No, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to open up one that was open. Oh, I guess I closed it. But so let me go ahead and open it up. Just stand by just a second. It's asking me to open this nice little program up and so I'm using this command line tool. I could have just opened up command, CMD, and then open it up and start typing and start going away. But what I did was I followed our friend Andrew Connell, and we're going to mention him a lot. By the way, he has a talk show also for the cloud. And they're sort of like, if you can think of us a little bit more blue collars, because he is a true expert. He knows how the bits and pieces work. He has more gravitas to talk about that stuff. So as I say, we will talk about everything that we can coming in from our level. Definitely, he is our friend, and we want to make sure that he continues doing what he's doing. Meanwhile, he's turned me on to this particular command line tool, which is essentially, it's called Commander, and I believe I have copy of it over here on. This is where I got it from. It's called Commander. All right, just download it free from over here. What's very cool about this is because now that we're doing stuff in this open source way of doing things, we're going to find ourselves looking at instructions where some people are doing it on the Mac, some people are doing it somewhere else, some people are doing it in Linux. It's nice to be able to have the same commands that they have. So I can go, for example, over here. Let me go cd dev, where I put stuff. Okay, that's a typical command, right? So I can go dir and look at stuff, or I can go ls, check it out. All right, so one was an old Unix command, and the other one was DOS. I get to play with DOS and Unix at the same time. How about it? All right, so we have our command line, so we can get all this stuff done. So what's the first thing? Well, let's look at our tools over here. So obviously we have to go and download all these things. So we have to probably download and install Node. And by the way, Larry on his C#4U.com site has a little notes on how you can install some of those bits over there, some little tips and tricks for that. But you would go ahead and get those and install them. In the end, you get this little command that's very important, and we should start learning more. It's called npm. So I'm just going to type npm just for the sake of it, so you can see all it can do. Let's see if it gets mad at me. It's thinking about it, maybe because I'm not asking for anything. Hello npm, there we go. So here's npm, just telling me the things that I can do with it. And mostly everything else is going to be like an npm dash install, or install, I should say, something. So -G for global. So I would install all these programs over here, for example. So I could install Visual Studio Code. I could install Yeoman. Or say, for example, if I wanted to install Yeoman and Gulp, I'd go install Yo and Gulp. Look at that. I can install two programs at the same time. They're already installed, so I'm not going to bother to show this. But that's the concept of putting something in. All right? And that's how quick it is to just get going with this. Once those are installed, you can do a whole bunch of other stuff. So let's go take a look at the next step on the line over here. Let's go look at Yeoman. So say if I installed Yeoman, all right, so now oh, wait a minute. One more thing I should say. Remember I said Yeoman's the scaffolder, all right? It scaffolds and does all the stuff. But of course, Yeoman has no idea about Microsoft and everything else. Essentially, Microsoft had to create stuff which would work for Yeoman. So they followed the rules. And if you wanted to use something with Yeoman, you actually had to install it. So I would go npm install -G, and I would say at Microsoft. And Microsoft is so important that it would have its own at thing. And I would say SharePoint -generator. And what that would do, it would install the generators for essentially the Microsoft for the Yeoman stuff. All right. If they created something else for a different program, I imagine they'll have something else, or maybe by just typing that, it automatically installs it for all. I'm not sure what they're going to do. After that, then I can go Yo. So if I go Yo, here we go. So here's Yo, and it's got the generator already installed. So you see over here, I have my at Microsoft SharePoint as a generator, or I can choose another generator right over here. Or I could essentially say I want to update my generators or install a new generator, or just get me out of here, right? So let me just get me out of here just for the sake of it. Oh, check it out. Buy from us. There's the Yeoman team putting in their stuff. Open source. Go there. You can contribute to them if you would like. All right. So, okay. So that's what Yo can do. But I can just go straight to Microsoft. So I can do this. Yo at Microsoft/SharePoint. All right. And that would do it for me. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something special I'm going to show you guys right now. And this was taught to me by, again, our friend Andrew Cannell right now is the premier show-it-all person for, at least for the SharePoint side of things. There's other places we can do this. They did the skip install step, which is cool, because otherwise it would take us a very long time to see this install. So watch us create a SharePoint scaffold real quick. Just want you to see it very fast. All right, here we go. We're going to do a skip install. All right, so it's going to ask for a solution name. We're going to call this solution Cloud Talk number 1. All right, and what's it going to do? The current folder or a subfolder? So I'm just going to say a subfolder. Look, I just arrowed down to select that subfolder. I could have just made a directory and just went there. And they gave us some frameworks to try out. Now, here's another thing that's very important to see. One of the things that when you're doing web stuff or cloud stuff, you're probably going to want to see. You're going to probably want to know one of these frameworks. And this is what we're going to end up talking about, and what we're going to end up maybe commiserating about as we go further, right? The two frameworks that they decided right now to at least begin with is React and Knockout. React is like the Facebook folks came up with that. Knockout is Microsoft folks that actually came out with that. There's also Angular, but apparently there's some issues with that, so it's not there yet. But that's another story for another, maybe for Andrew Connell's talk show at some point. But for us, we're going to basically take on whatever is available to us. So we have React over here. As I said, that Microsoft picked that one. I can choose one of these, but for now I'm just going to say no framework, which means we can add our own later on. Okay. All right. What's the name of the web part? Hello World sounds cool. I'm just going to call it Cloud Talk. Okay. And the web part description, Larry asked for it. How about that? Okay. And well, you see how fast that was? By the way, if I had done this without that skip install step, we would have been waiting here for a while, or I would have had to fast forward it to see it cook. All right. But it just installed it for you right off the bat. And here's the cool thing. So let me go change directory to that Cloud Talk.
Number one.
Yep, number one. Let's go see to that. And now this is cool. I learned this one. I didn't realize you could do this on command line. So I can just go code dot, right? Or here, I'll just show you what I can do here. I can go explorer dot. I didn't know you can do this. Check out what it does here. And it opened it up in my other screen. But look, it just opened up the Explorer view of what was created. Check out the files that it created. See all that stuff that it did? It did a package JSON, it did the JS files, but it's not all there. All right, the files are not all there. So let me go code dot, just so you can see Visual Studio Code in action. And that should open up a fresh new program, probably in my other screen, and sure enough in my other screen, which I'll drag over here in just a second.
I like the transparency. You know, just while we're filling time here.
Yeah,
transparency
isn't that cool?
Got on Commander. Yeah.
Commander, so the Commander's got that built-in transparency. But here's the code. Check it out. I can go in and follow my source and look at my code bits over here. So just to show you what it has built, ready to go. So that's all set. But that's not ready to go yet because all the pieces are not here yet. All right? And to make those pieces work, I still have to install my pieces. So I could go like this. I can go npm install, right? npm install will automatically install all the bits that are missing. So what it does is it looks at the gulp, I believe it's the gulp file, and it says, okay, what are all, oh no, I'm sorry, the package file. I keep forgetting what it's called. Let me go up to the Visual Studio Code here so you can see over here what command it's looking for. It's looking for the package. Here we go. There's the package. See this package over here? Says what the dependencies are. This is what it's looking for. So it needs to install all these. These are not here right now. It's going to go get all these. So that's what the install command
we did
does.
the skip install on the.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to use another program though. He turned me on to. It's called Yarn. It's called Yarn. Basically, I'm going to do Yarn, but hold on a second. Yarn dash help. Let's try it. If that'll do it that way. Yes. Okay. Sorry. So I have to remember that there's a dash and there's a dash dash. All right. So I want to do this. I want to do a dash dash ignore platform because there is a bug on it right now that doesn't work. So I'm going to go Yarn install, and I'm going to do dash dash ignore dash platform. Okay. And we're going to speed this up a little bit later on. But here's what it's doing. It's now installing everything. All the bits. There was another step that if you had been doing this from scratch and you followed the instructions that are on the Microsoft site for getting your first pieces set up, that tells you to set up a dev cert. And so let me show you that while it's waiting for that. I'm going to open up another emulator. And it's supposed to give me just a list of the commands that are available to me. That's all. That's all I'm looking for.
Print the
Here we
task
go.
dependency tree for the.
There we go. That's it. And I need to show this because this is important. Essentially, you can create your own tasks and everything in Gulp. This would be another thing to learn. Like in the DevOps sense and everything else, I think this is an important one that we should be learning. I know Andrew Connell says you don't need to know this one too well, but I really think this needs to be learned better. Just like what I was doing over here. So look, there's clean, there's build, because you have to do a lot of these anyway. We have to deploy, we have to bundle, we have to test, we have to do various things. So, I mean, one of the most important things over here is once you have something working, you would just go gulp serve, right? To be able to, like, essentially make it come out. Let's go ahead and, by the way, let's take a look here, see how they're doing. So over here, by the way, because I used Yarn, it installed these items here really, really fast. These first set of items. This would take otherwise another 10 minutes longer, but as you can see now, it's doing linking dependency. So that, unfortunately, is a step you have to do every time. This is what's different also from Visual Studio. With Visual Studio, everything was all ready to go pretty much at that point. When you hit build, at that point you waited to build. Now, I think this is the same as Visual Studio. If you're building something, right, and it's got a lot of pieces to it, the compile time is going to take a while if it's huge. All right, but that being said, this is not that huge compared to Visual Studio programs. So
Right.
this is like an extra step or an extra amount of time that you take to do something to this level because of all these dependencies, because how huge these programs are. They can probably be optimized, and there'll probably be better tools to optimize these going forward, right? But this is something that we have to now deal with. However, they make this faster, but we've all of a sudden we speed it up. We got like to the point where like we can compile and build within minutes. Next thing you know, we're like, oh, now it's taking a long time again. And we're going to work our way backwards to that, I suppose. But of course, what Yarn does over here is it's caching all this stuff. So once I do this build, the next time I do it, it's going to be really, 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 really fast. Right? The reason why this is taking a while now is because it's the first time it's actually doing it to this particular project. As opposed to if I did it over here to a project where I already ran Yarn for, it would probably run much faster. But we want to see this one working, so let's give it a few minutes, and then we're going to show this, and then we're done for our show, for this portion of the show at least. And we're going to add more to the show in a little bit here. By the way, a couple of things that are coming up in the future. We're going to probably take questions, or we're actually going to pick maybe one of the comments from the blog and actually highlight it over here. Like a little question and answer, like a little mailbox thingy.
Yeah.
We'll do some of that. We probably are going to have some special presentations. In fact, one of the reasons why we did this is not so much for us to be learning how else to do it, but for the company that we work with, and of course, full disclosure, we are working for a company. We have day jobs. We're actually at the same day job, at least currently, right? Which and that's not going to make a difference where it goes in the future. But a lot of it also is to help our colleagues get into it. So part of the reason to have the show is to help them really get on board with a lot of the stuff we're going. Because the way we believe it now is like all this web development is the same across the board, no matter what you're doing, where you're doing it, what you're doing it for. We might talk about SharePoint a lot more on this one, at least initially especially, but that's only because that's where we're focused at the moment. Certainly we would like to get your comments and ideas on where else we can go, what other things we can do. We're definitely going to go, we're going to give it a try. And as they say, look at it from our perspective as opposed to the folks that may have the direct ear of Microsoft. We don't have we won't promise that we have the direct ear of anybody necessarily. However, just like anyone else, we will basically share our way of helping find things. I think what makes us, as they say, senior people, other than our age, is the fact that we've learned over time how to best look for something in the shortest amount of time possible. Right? When someone else would have not looked before, it would take them a while to, as they say, search the ground. We would say, well, we've thread ground before so many times, we sort of know where to go. So just like when I was sort of like fooling around earlier, trying to just remember the way to get the tasks up, it was just a matter of like finding our way to find it real quick. Now, that only took a few minutes. Could have taken us a longer time than that. For some people, it might. Right? And for some people, I know that at the back of my hand. I remember that. I memorize it. Some folks can do that. That's all fine and well. But the idea is we're going to give you what we can know, what we know at least, to help you get there. And this looks like this is almost done.
And speaking of our day jobs, the opinions expressed on this program are ours and ours alone.
Indeed. That's right. Not reflecting of our day jobs or anyone we're related to, for that matter.
That's right.
Oh, here it goes. Here it goes. Oh, almost. Come on. Come on. Building fresh packages. You feel like you're in a Jewel or something, or a Safeway. It's putting fresh packages together.
Asynchronously.
Hey, how about that? Look at this.
See, they're threaded.
They are on a command line.
On a command line. Very cool.
Well, by now you'd think they would have invented that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there we go. So now I can go quickly. Gulp serve. Let's go ahead. It's probably going to open it up on a different web page somewhere else. And there it goes. It's now setting up all the tasks. Again, these are the tasks. Take a look. All it's doing It's doing linting, it's doing extracting, it's doing web packing, it's right manifesting or manifest writing, however you like to call it. And here we go. Ooh, look, this is a SharePoint scaffold. This is called the Workbench. This is a local one, but this can work online. And if I hit the plus sign, I'm going to see we have our Cloud Talk piece over here. And of course, my Cloud Talk piece is working perfectly because, like, I can go over here and say, Cloud Talking now. Check it out, how it's making the changes right off the bat.
Nice.
All right, so there it is. It's on a web page. It's everything else, and even though it's a web part, it's completely client side, which means what the technologies that went on just for the SharePoint side over here was made for that. But I could have done this for something else. And basically, that's all I wanted to show for this particular show.
All right.
All right.
Looks good.
All right. So, Larry, I'm going to talk to you a little bit later. We're going to pause now the program from here. There might be a little bit more. If not, we're going to catch you guys on the next show. And we'll see you all shortly or in a while from Cloud Talk. All right. Say bye, Larry.
Bye.
Okay.